Hello, ladies and gentlemen, the league phase of the Champions League has just ended. Without a doubt, a dramatic finish to it all. One of my favorite clubs got first place, the other in elimination zone, by the finest of margins, sharing points with the Premier League champion. We will get into all the specifics as the video goes along, as yes, I will be reacting to every single one of the predictions I made on this league phase right before it all started. Obviously, a lot of stuff was bound to age terribly, with some surprises in this Champions League without a doubt. Regardless, along with reacting to my predictions, I will also be scoring it as well. Shout out to GHJN5640, who suggested me to do this system. You will try to predict each and every team as close as you can. For example, if you predict Slovan Bratislava to finish 36th and they finish 35th, you'll get a -1 point. If you predict them 36 and they somehow finish first, you get -35 points. You're going to do the same thing for every other team. Basically, you want to accumulate as few negative points as you can. Brilliant idea. That is exactly what we will be doing today, along with scoring myself based if I got the club in the correct position. Obviously, as most of you know by now, there are 3 different sections in this league phase. Top 8, which is the automatic spots to the round of 16. Then there were the playoff spots, along with the elimination zone. So I'll also be keeping track of how many clubs I got correct for each zone in particular. Should be fun, should be a good laugh. Regardless, please, if you haven't already, like this video, subscribe if you're new, and also let me know how you guys did in the comments below. Now let's start off the video with all the sides I think will be eliminated from the tournament. Going from bottom to top, starting off with last place, I'm going to be giving it to Slovan Bratislava. Underrated players here for sure, and they have had some cool runs in the Conference League, but I think the UCL aggression will get to them. Alright, so not too bad of a start. Obviously not the exact placement correct, but Slovan Bratislava was actually the second worst club in the Champions League. They finished 35th, only above Young Boys, but still 8 for 8 losses. So honestly, definitely not a terrible guess right there. That will be just 1 negative point, but thankfully I obviously did get it in the correct zone. It was really close to being correct as well. Just 1 goal difference separating Young Boys and Slovan Bratislava. Again though, it was no massive surprise. They had some very tough opponents, and also they are normally Conference League regulars, so it did seem like the Champions League would be a bit of a stretch for them to get proper results in. 35th place, I have gone with SK Sturm Graz. Alright, so I actually massively shot myself in the foot with this recording in terms of organization. Sorry that it had to happen this early on in the video, but it is what it is. Later on in this prediction, I swapped Sturm Graz with Sparta Praha. So I'll once again show each club individually one by one in between those 2 teams, but I still gotta reveal you all what happened in the meantime. So yeah, as you can see, instead of Sturm Graz at 35th, I put Sparta Praha, which was not necessarily the smartest thing to do, as Sparta Praha actually finished 31st, and I got worried when this Champions League campaign started, as Sparta Praha had a phenomenal start, destroying Salzburg at the beginning. But they very much collapsed later on. They even got one of the heaviest defeats in the competition this season to Atletico Madrid. The one thing Sparta Praha will take pride in though is that their goalkeeper Vindal did finish the league phase campaign with the most saves out of any goalkeeper at 41. Anyway, that difference puts me at -4 with Sparta Praha, but I still got their placement in the zone correct. Up next, although I hope I'm wrong on this, at 34th place, I'm going with Crvena Zvezda. You definitely can argue that they were paired up against some more challenging sides. They have to travel to the San Siro twice, but these guys, no matter how well they're doing in their own domestic league, seem to struggle in European football. Maybe they have what it takes to surprise one of those pot 1 or 2 teams, but can they keep up the consistency throughout? I think it'll be too tough. They're also going away to Switzerland to face Young Boys, and both these clubs were in the same Champions League group last time, where Young Boys ultimately did better than them. Crvena Zvezda actually finished 29th. It made no sense for me to predict their scores against Young Boys last season for this one, as they actually were able to defeat them head-to-head this time around. They did take some heavy beatings in this competition, but they also annihilated a club that many did not expect them to defeat. Stuttgart had been having somewhat of a solid season, and they still destroyed them 5-1. At 33rd place, I am going to be putting the side I just talked about, Young Boys. I don't want to fully rule out this side. They came up against Galatasaray in the playoffs and beat them over both legs, but I also think Galatasaray are not in their best shape at the moment. An impressive club, don't get me wrong, definitely capable of some upsets, but regardless, at the end, I see them finishing in this bottom tier. Yeah, it was quite impressive that this club were able to qualify for the Champions League over Galatasaray. But honestly, I think we all would have preferred to see Galatasaray at the Champions League, as they were horrific in this campaign. 8 for 8 losses at the bottom. That's a -3 difference for me. I really thought this side would at least be able to squeeze in a draw, even with their difficult schedule. But they without a doubt just need to focus on next season. This one was an absolute disaster. Okay, I'm skipping the next segment of my predictions because this is where I made that swap with Sturm Graz and Sparta Praha. Sturm Graz at 32nd. I am kind of happy I made the switch because I knew they would put off some very close fights in the competition. Many times they fell short, it was just by 1 goal, besides getting annihilated by Atalanta 5-0. But on the final match day, they were able to defeat RB Leipzig. It seems like they've been getting the best out of the Red Bull clubs lately. Anyway, that already puts my total up to -15, but at least we got every zone placement correct so far. Moving on to 31st place. Now this is a club I would not be surprised that would prove me wrong and make it to that playoff spot, but I'm still going to play it safe and put them in this bottom tier, Celtic. I knew there was a massive chance for this one to age terribly, and it very much did. Celtic did get one heavy beating in this Champions League competition to Dortmund, but other than that, they have been very solid. They secured themselves a playoff spot at 21st place. That is a -10 difference on my part, and also my first club where I predicted the zone incorrectly, but definitely not the last. This one really took a massive stint. We're definitely going to get to the hundreds in this video in terms of my difference. -25 now. At 30th, just above them, I'm putting Brest, a side that definitely punched their weight last season, finishing 3rd in the French league. They've got some exciting loanees coming their way, but something tells me this won't be the same Brest team that we have seen last season. And it's only getting worse from here, but you know what? I'm actually happy for this club, Brest. In their first ever Champions League, they secured a playoff spot. In the earlier stages, they were fighting for the top 8 for some time as well, just collapsed at the end due to their tough schedule. It's interesting as in Ligue 1, they aren't having the most spectacular season, but putting majority of the eggs in their basket in the Champions League has been paying off, and hopefully we continue to see them having a miraculous run in this tournament. -12 difference and our second one wrong in terms of overall zone. Now at 29th, I'm going to be putting my own club, so I truly hope I'm wrong on this, Dinamo Zagreb. And I do see Dinamo Zagreb making some upsets here. We've seen it before. For example, they win the first match day against Chelsea and still finish bottom of the group by the end. Oh bože, Dinamo. Of course, I'm upset to get this zone correct, as Dinamo fell short in the most annoying fashion. The highest possible spot to get eliminated from the Champions League at this stage, and they shared the same amount of points with Manchester City, Sporting, and Club Brugge. Dinamo upset Milan on the final match day, and it ended up meaning nothing. And it's all because of that first match day, where they suffered the highest scoring defeat in Champions League history to Bayern Munich. The goal difference set them back, and also in the second match day to Monaco. They were able to hold them off at Maximir as well, until the dying minutes where they came back. Unfortunate Dinamo, but at the same time, it's really nice to see how hard they fought till the end in this Champions League campaign. Now at 28th place, this might be a bit of a surprise, but I'm going to take Bologna. Their manager has left. Now they've got Italiano, who was the manager for Fiorentina and took them to 2 Conference League finals. But this ain't the Conference League no more, and he showed his inconsistencies there. He's great for tournament-style football, but this tournament has changed to a more league-type format. Not only is their key manager gone, so are some key players. Now at 27th, I might go for another surprise, potentially a bigger surprise than Bologna. I'm putting Leipzig, mainly because they got so unlucky in the draw. Liverpool, Inter Milan, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, Sporting, who are very underrated, Celtic I already talked about, Aston Villa, and Sturm Graz. That's going to be my massive upset though, if you want to even call it one. RB Leipzig not being able to make it to the knockout rounds. Now obviously the placement was off. However, I count this as a win. The amount of people roasting me for this prediction in particular was insane. All the top comments were coming at me. Yet Leipzig did even worse than I predicted. 1 win and 7 defeats. 32nd place, only above 4 clubs. But according to some of you, just because they ended Bayer Leverkusen's unbeaten streak in the Bundesliga means they deserve to make it to the knockouts of the Champions League. They had some underwhelming performances like on the last match day to SK Sturm Graz where they lost, and they also got defeated by Celtic. It was such a dreadful campaign, even surprising for me who predicted them to be eliminated. They do have a fantastic squad, and they underperformed even more than I could have imagined. I already know that I made so many bad predictions in this video, but I'm not even that torn about it, because at least I got this one somewhat correct, that Leipzig would be eliminated at this league phase. The unfortunate thing of it all is that initially I said that they would finish 27th, and I decided to flop around the order. So I'll show the rest of the predictions in a sec that I made for this elimination phase, but I actually put Leipzig at 25th at the end. Still in elimination zone, but the best of the eliminated teams. Yet they were amongst one of the worst, which puts them at a -7 difference. At 26th place, I'm going for Lille. The biggest news for this side is how they lost Lenny Yoro to Man United, but they've got some cool free transfers including Munier and Mbappe. Not Kylian even, but they will be facing Kylian Mbappe. Looking at their schedule, they're coming up against Real Madrid. Really at the borderline with the rest of the teams. I could see Jonathan David getting on the score sheet quite a bit, but maybe defensively, it will be tough for them against these tough clubs. And the last team I'm having to get knocked out of the Champions League early at this league phase, just under the playoff spot at 25th place, is Club Brugge. The problem is they have a difficult schedule. All of their home matches are no joke, having to face Dortmund, Juventus, Sporting, and Aston Villa. So yeah, here are all the sides I have getting knocked out of the league phase. Would I change any of the orders last minute now? Maybe. I think I shot a bit too high with Club Brugge. I think their schedule is just a bit too tough for me to think that they are a borderline side. You know what? I'm going to swap them with Leipzig first, and then probably put Bologna in front of them. So yeah, that's my new order. Again, I'm really sorry I'm changing everything last minute like this, but it's not easy when you got to evaluate so many teams with different schedules. So obviously, second guessing that Leipzig prediction ended up being a terrible decision, as I could have gotten my first placement absolutely correct. Bologna finished 28th. I had them there initially, and I decided to bump them up just one placement, which puts them at a -1 difference compared to my predictions. They got loads of draws in this campaign, but still more losses and just one win towards the end against Dortmund. That one wasn't as bad as the other predictions I made towards this part though. I said Club Brugge would be in this elimination zone, but they took the last possible spot for the playoffs. 24th place, like I mentioned, sharing points with Dinamo Zagreb. I'm never getting over it. Why couldn't they just hold on to that lead against Manchester City? Anyway, in terms of the placements, it's not too bad, just a -4 difference, but I did predict them in the wrong zone. But by far, one of the worst predictions I had in this video was Lille. They outperformed in this Champions League campaign, and I put them in the elimination zone, defeating both Madrid clubs, drawing with Juventus, and getting an incredible win against Feyenoord on the last match day. A match that should have been more 50-50, and Lille absolutely destroyed the Dutch club. This put them in the top 8. I was not even close with this prediction at all. -19 difference is just insane. It's funny how football works though. Most people are getting mad at me for that Leipzig call. However, everyone should have been yelling at me for that Lille prediction. It was horrendous. Shout out to them. They have proven that even for the Giants in the Champions League, they're a side that are not to be underestimated. Anyway, that does conclude this section of the video where I predicted all of the teams to be in elimination zone. And in terms of teams to actually finish there, I got 8 correct and 4 incorrect. I genuinely feel like that Lille prediction should count as 2 wrong though. Anyway, let's see what I had to say for the playoff teams. The first club I have advancing just by a stint to the next round is RB Salzburg. Not too long ago, unfortunately, they did prove themselves against Dinamo Zagreb, and Brest and Sparta Praha should be exciting fixtures. Those pot 1 and 2 teams will definitely be a massive challenge, but this side has always been known for the youngsters they produce. They just picked up 2 Liverpool youngsters lacking minutes at their club, Bobby Clark for 11.8 million and Bajcetic on loan. Although they lost some of their big names like Serbian Pavlovic going to Milan and Luka Sucic going to Real Sociedad, this club has kept their foundation and identity throughout this entire time. It's going to be close, but I think they will make it to the playoffs at the end. So I overestimated Salzburg. I thought they would be an incredible young bunch that could throw off some teams here. However, just like Leipzig, they only picked up 1 win and 7 losses. Red Bull heavily disappointed in this Champions League campaign. The main reason why I thought they would make it out to the playoffs though is because I thought they did not have the toughest schedule, yet they still continuously disappointed. Their only victory, which I knew no one would have predicted, was against Feyenoord. This side overall have been shocking though. They're currently 5th in the Austrian Bundesliga as well. It has been dark times for them without a doubt, but anyway, that's a -10 goal difference on my end with my prediction, and also I'm 0 for 1 in terms of getting placements correct in this playoff zone. At 23rd, I'll be selecting Feyenoord. The club is transitioning out of slot, which is definitely going to be a massive shift. Okay, compared to my other predictions, this one was actually not such a bad call. It's crazy how the standards have changed. Anyway, Feyenoord actually finished 19th place when I predicted them to finish 23rd. They had a very rocky road in this Champions League, an unpredictable one as well. Like I said, they're the only team to lose to Salzburg, yet they go on to defeat Bayern Munich 3-0. They actually could have pushed for that top 8 spot at the end. They were neck and neck with Lille. Lille took it instead after defeating them 6-1 on the final match day. Without a doubt, probably the most inconsistent team in the Champions League, but it was enough for them to make it to the playoffs. Congratulations to them with their first season without Arne Slot. Now for 22nd place, I've gone for Stuttgart. Let's not forget that this club did finish over Bayern Munich last season in the Bundesliga, so we cannot take them lightly. I was a bit hesitant to evaluate how they would overcome their long-awaited return to the Champions League, but I think they have what it takes to be a playoff team in the standings. This one was unfortunate now, wasn't it? I mean, Stuttgart were really hanging on by a thread, but they had to face PSG on the final match day, which is what set them back to put them in that elimination zone. They were fighting throughout this competition, also with some inconsistent performances. They go on to beat the likes of Juventus and then lose to Crvena Zvezda 5-1. So I can't say they didn't deserve to be eliminated, but it was very close from them. Now one that really could age terribly, although I don't want to discredit them too much. I mean, I'm still putting them in the playoff position. I'm putting Benfica at 21st. Benfica in the last Champions League were extremely underwhelming, but in the one before they cut all of Europe's side, topping their difficult group. The problem with Benfica and why I put them lower than I probably should have is because of their difficult draw. I mean, they can definitely handle those top teams on their day, but it begs the question, what Benfica are we really going to get this year? Must wins are needed against all the pot 3 and 4 teams. A mystery bag for sure. They can either surprise against those giants or crumble, but the repeat against Juventus will definitely be interesting. I'm saying that they pull things off with some slight complications their way, eventually finding a playoff position. So Benfica actually finished 16th. Not too much of a wild difference compared to what I had to say. Right before the final match day, they were also hanging on by a thread just like Stuttgart. But thankfully for them, their final opponent was Juventus, who they've been always getting the best of in recent times. I'm happy this side went through though. They had some really dominant displays, like at the beginning where they defeated Atletico Madrid 4-0. Just above them will be one of their opponents, Monaco. Not an easy job by any means these guys got, but they are capable of producing a few surprises. And I hate to say it, but they should be able to handle the ex-Yugo teams. It seems like the club are on the right track to excel. This one's interesting. In my prediction, I had Monaco finish just above Benfica, but in reality, Benfica finished just above them at the end. This one I was a bit closer on, a -3 difference. Monaco's result against Barcelona at the beginning definitely gave them some kind of edge. They had some really close calls later on though. Like I mentioned, they just came back to Dinamo Zagreb, barely beat Aston Villa and Bologna, barely lost to Benfica. Overall, I can't say there was too much surprise in this campaign. At 19th place, I'll put the Ukrainian club Shakhtar. This club over the years have produced some serious ballers, and this season I'm expecting big things from Sudakov. They got a draw, they should feel comfortable getting 3 points in some of the fixtures. Alright, we were doing alright for a bit, but now we came to Shakhtar, who did finish in elimination zone at 27th place. Yeah, there's no doubt that this side definitely have had better Champions League campaigns than this. Their biggest letdown of the campaign without a doubt was against PSV, where they were 2-0 up for majority of the match. But then once the 87th minute hit, they conceded 3 goals. It's unfortunate for the Ukrainian club, definitely a season to forget. They're also not doing too hot in their own domestic league either. I'm putting one of their opponents right above them, PSV. Speaking of PSV though, this prediction was not too bad. -4 difference, correct placement as well in the zone. Beating Liverpool on the final match day was definitely a massive boost. They love those 3-2 scorelines, don't they? But that was not Liverpool's strongest lineup. Their only 2 losses came against Juventus and Brest throughout the campaign. So we'll see how PSV can continue to progress. They definitely have an incredible attacking unit that can throw off teams. As soon as there's any kind of defensive mistake, PSV heavily exposes their opposition. So this side, without a doubt, can impress going into the playoffs. I'm really curious to see what happens against Girona for them though. For me, I'm putting this club just above them at 17th place. Alright, a glimpse of hope turns into once again one of the worst predictions I had in this video. Girona. They were the 4th worst club in this tournament. 16 places different from what I had to say. Their only win the entire tournament was against Slovan Bratislava. This was their first ever Champions League campaign to be fair, but they also broke the own goal record in the tournament. Yeah, I definitely got too ahead of myself with this club as they had a fantastic season last year, but with a lot of transfers and definitely not being able to replicate what they've done before, it was an absolute nightmare for them in the Champions League. At 16th, I've gone for the Europa League champions, Atalanta. So Atalanta did much better than I expected, just outside the top 8 at 9th place. Very unlucky for them, as they only picked up 1 loss the entire campaign. I've said it time and time again, what Gasperini is doing is incredible. For me, their performances still deserve to be an automatic round of 16 spot, but at least they'll be seated highly for the playoffs. They actually have less losses than some of the teams that did qualify for the top 8. Their only loss was against Real Madrid, where they actually put off an incredible fight, and some say we're unlucky to even lose that match. Next up, I've gone for Aston Villa. They have not been in the Champions League since the 80s. Mixed feelings about them, of course, but there's no denying how impressive they've been under Unai Emery. I'm saying they finished 15. At least I predicted Aston Villa to finish just above Atalanta. But either way, they definitely finished higher than I thought. Aston Villa finishing at the 8th spot to secure automatic qualification to the round of 16, defeating some historic clubs in the competition, scoring 4 past Celtic on the final match day, defeating Bayern, drawing with Juventus. The only 2 clubs that were able to defeat Aston Villa were Monaco and Club Brugge. An electric campaign without a doubt. We really saw incredible moments from the likes of John Duran as well. Will Unai Emery have another incredible underdog run in the Champions League? What he did with Villarreal was not that long ago, and that was his best ever run in the Champions League, despite managing the likes of Arsenal and PSG. 14th place for me goes to AC Milan. Their poor start to the Serie A so far is a theme I think will be present this season: inconsistency. The way things are going right now, I honestly see the top clubs in their draw getting the best of them. 14th isn't even bad, but obviously I think this club should strive better and very much compete for the top 8. This one was so close. Milan, I was just 1 placement off. They were fighting for that top 8 and looked to have secured it because they were facing Dinamo Zagreb on the final match day. However, they lost in Maksimir, a massive upset, which put them down to 13th. They had a really poor start but began to bounce back, even defeating Real Madrid, but not being able to defeat Dinamo Zagreb definitely has them not deserving a top 8 spot. I think it's great that they definitely changed management. It definitely turned out well for them, winning the Supercoppa Italiana final, but work needs to be done for this historic club. It's still not the same degree as it used to be from them. Regardless, I definitely will take this prediction. I still have yet to get a single placement correct, but -1 is not too bad. This will be my somewhat underdog that just missed out of that top 8 spot, Sporting. Besides Manchester City, I think they should be very happy with their draw. To me, this team will be flying high this year as they only seem to build momentum. We go back now to the double digits, -10 on Sporting. To be fair, earlier on in the season, this prediction looked to be a lot more realistic, until Amorim decided to leave the club. Yes, Sporting were fighting for a top 8 spot under him, and then pretty much as soon as he left, they began to fight for a playoff position. It's crazy how the tables have turned for this club so quickly as well. They were extremely lucky to secure a point against Bologna at the end, as since Amorim's departure, they did not win a single Champions League game. They even gave RB Leipzig their only Champions League victory. I feel very doubtful for this club now. For me, they were going to be one of the underdogs in this tournament under Amorim. But with him quickly going to Manchester United and not even doing well there, everything has flipped for them. I do feel a bit bad for them. And I'm not even going to knock myself for this prediction, as I wasn't expecting Amorim to leave so abruptly. Now for 12th, I'm seeing some people are predicting this club to flop this season. And although I think they'll struggle at moments, I think overall they'll still keep their high profile and eventually secure somewhat of a top spot in this league phase. I'm going for PSG. To some fans, no Mbappe means the club's in shambles, but in their first 2 Ligue 1 matches, they've already scored 10 goals. They made some upgrades as well, like Joao Neves will be a serious improvement. My issue with PSG is that they did get a very difficult pot 1 and 2 draw selection. One of the toughest ones, actually. I think they will potentially drop points there, but will still finish with 14 or 15 at the end. I shot a bit high with PSG for sure, but I was not too far off with them, only a 3 difference. They finished 15th and bounced back well, as they definitely had a difficult schedule. Defeating the likes of Manchester City, though, and having a strong finish against Stuttgart definitely gives them a deserving spot to the playoffs. Not much to say here, honestly. Obviously, they did fall short at times they did not wish to, but they're still doing incredibly domestically. They just seem to be finding their footing in European football. 11th place, Bayer Leverkusen. Of course, they're going into this season with high hopes after building the reputation of Bayern never losing. And although they always seem to find a way, apart from that Europa League final, they've been cutting many matches close. Will it be able to slide in their tough draw? We all saw what happened the last time they came up against an Italian club. Now they'll have to face 2, along with Liverpool and Atletico Madrid. I have the feeling they'll be able to beat at least one of these big clubs, but for them to get points every single time, I don't know. I still think it will be an impressive Champions League campaign, of course. I don't want to doubt the mastermind, Xabi Alonso. 11th place still has potential of a memorable year for European football. Just don't see the infinite success translating here in this top-tier competition. And I do think they'll slip a few times. I already know the last 3 in this playoff round are going to age like milk. Leverkusen actually did secure a top 8 spot. They finished 6th place. I remember that I was heavily debating putting them in that top 8 spot, but I decided against it last second. They definitely got a few huge statement wins. They're actually the only club to defeat Inter this Champions League tournament, and they also defeated the other Milan club early on. It's incredible how they managed to get the top 8 despite losing to Liverpool 4-0. Even though Xabi Alonso's unbeaten run is not as stable compared to last season, what he's doing with this club is still incredible, and I'm only hoping the best for him moving forward. That's a -5 difference, but I already calculated the next two are each -6. 10th place will be one of their opponents, Inter Milan. Something in my gut for some reason tells me they're the perfect candidate of one of those borderline clubs that fail to succeed and not make the top 8. Yup, definitely not the wisest decision to put Inter there. They were by far one of the best teams in this Champions League tournament so far, definitely clinching some of their results. However, they got 7 out of 8 clean sheets in the Champions League. Like I just mentioned, the only side they lost to was Leverkusen. Despite Inter having a great season so far, I feel like some matches they have been cutting too close, but they went out big on the final match day, Lautaro Martinez getting a hat-trick against Monaco. The one who I have suffering the most heartbreak though, one of Inter Milan's opponents actually, is Arsenal. 9th place, the best of the playoff teams in this prediction video. Their draw looks doable actually, they should be happy with it. However, I can't help but feel that one of those underdogs will leave Arsenal surprised. Like I mentioned, once again, -6 on this one. Arsenal also secured a top 8 spot in convincing fashion as well. The only match that they lost was against Inter, and they still finished above them in the standings. I don't want to discredit them too much, obviously, but I can't lie. Looking at their schedule, it makes me think that I probably should have banked more on them to finish in the top 8. Regardless, full credit to them as they did suffer some injuries throughout the season. But moving on out to the clubs that I think will automatically qualify to the round of 16, that top 8, at 8th place, I'm going to be picking Atletico Madrid. Atletico's campaign was fascinating, and thankfully this is one of the few top 8 picks I actually got correct, despite the overall placement still being off. A -3 difference. It looked doubtful at times for Atletico, like for example when they lost to Benfica 4-0. That match followed with losing to Lille, but they wanted an unbeaten streak, continued to show dominance in the Champions League as well, defeating huge clubs like PSG and Leverkusen, annihilated Sparta Praha, and got convincing results against Slovan Bratislava and RB Salzburg. A top 8 position was definitely deserved for their revival. Above them by a stint, I'm putting Liverpool. Some are skeptical as Klopp has now left and been replaced by Slot, and they did make some great signings, but in positions that you can argue they didn't really need. The one problem is in their draw, they'll be facing their kryptonite Real Madrid. Time and time again, this club gets the best of Liverpool. I think they'll lose that matchup, but then win the majority of their other fixtures. It's not an easy draw, but one where they have what it takes to show their quality without a doubt. Thankfully, I still predicted Liverpool to finish in the top 8. However, I think most of us are shocked with how well they are doing. Obviously, it's no surprise with the quality they have. However, with transition and management, many were expecting Arne Slot to not be so dominant as he is now. Top of the Premier League and the Champions League, one loss in each competition only, is simply phenomenal. His only loss, like I mentioned earlier, came against PSV for not playing the strongest lineup. As they already secured a first place spot, he definitely won't mind too much losing that match. And their schedule was by no means easy, while still getting incredibly convincing results. Finally being able to defeat Real Madrid, destroying Leverkusen 4-0. The attacking numbers are continuing to prove their worth. Mohamed Salah in the Champions League, 7 direct goal contributions in 7 matches. Not as explosive compared to the Premier League, but still phenomenal. Anyway, due to their incredible first place finish, which I'm not complaining about, I got a -6 difference on this for Liverpool. Apart from having some poor business decisions, Barcelona's spirit seems to be high. Appointing Hansi Flick has been a bright start, along with Dani Olmo. Barcelona, apart from coming up against Bayern Munich, have a great draw in their hands. I don't want to say Bayern is their ultimate kryptonite, as we have seen memorable moments going their way, but most of the time they struggle against them heavily. Will the former Bayern boss be able to stop this routinely UCL historical event? Another club that I predicted successfully in the top 8, but did better than I expected. A lot of people warned me about this one, to be fair, a lot of confident Barcelona fans, and honestly could have grabbed first if they didn't draw with Atalanta on the last match day. Thankfully, I got that scoreline correct somehow. Obviously, this club has been getting a lot of praise. They're playing some beautiful football under Hansi Flick, being able to demolish Real Madrid every time they face them. However, they still have their inconsistent patches here and there. But all that mostly carried over to La Liga instead of the Champions League. They only had their massive halt on the first match day against Monaco where they lost there. Then they won all their other matches and drew with Atalanta at the end. Still a phenomenal campaign. Rafinha has shown his moments where he is one of the best players this season. Lewandowski is a joint top goal scorer of the Champions League so far. All praise to Barcelona, 4 places higher than I predicted. Not too bad, but the rest is about to be awful. I have a feeling that they'll draw with Dortmund though and get similar outcomes to them as well, meaning they might share points, so I'll have Dortmund just above them. Dortmund's draw is also favorable. Besides having to come up against both La Liga giants, these are opponents they should be beating. Borussia Dortmund, Champions League finalists from last season, actually looked to have secured a top 8 spot. At first, the only two sides that they lost to was an expected defeat against Barcelona and Real Madrid. Barcelona was still a close fight. Against Real Madrid, though, they heavily blew their 2-0 lead at the Santiago Bernabeu. But regardless, even with those two defeats, they could have still secured a top 8 spot. However, they lost to Bologna, giving them their only victory this Champions League campaign, which resulted in them sacking their manager Şahin. They picked themselves up against Shakhtar after, but if they were able to beat Bologna, I would have gotten this prediction spot on. Dortmund would have been 5th place, sharing points with Atletico Madrid, but higher due to goal difference. They finished just outside the top 8, 10th place instead, with 15 points. -5 difference. I can't really say this has been the best Dortmund we've been seeing in the Bundesliga. Their record has not been up to par. Same amount of victories as defeats at the time of this recording. So I don't know how the rest of their Champions League campaign will go. Obviously, we have to see how they perform under new management now. However, they do have some positives to come out of this campaign, as Guirassy was also the joint top goal scorer along with Lewandowski with 9 goals in this league phase. Now, a club that's finally making their return to UCL football after having many disappointing years is Juventus. Their rebuild under Thiago Motta had him make some interesting decisions, like saying Chiesa would not be part of the plan. But it's hard to question him too much, as he just thrived with Bologna last season, and he's already gotten 2 3-0 scorelines going his way. Juventus looks to have an exciting competitive year ahead, and by the looks of it from their draw, their only massive obstacle will be Manchester City. Alright, now we're approaching terrible territory. Juventus was a terrible pick to put in top 8. At first it looked promising though, and I guess I just trusted Thiago Motta's rebuild. However, both in the Champions League and the Serie A, he was picking up way too many draws. If they beat Benfica at the end, they would have been much higher in the standings, but of course they had to lose to them for the 3rd time in a row. They still had some memorable moments, defeating PSV on the very first Champions League night of this season, being able to take advantage of a poor Manchester City, but still with their 2 losses against Stuttgart and Benfica and picking up too many draws in this Champions League campaign, it is no surprise that they fell so short to 20th place. A 16 place difference from what I said. Definitely Juventus needs some more time to rebuild. For some reason, I genuinely believe that this year things would change for them, but it still has been a bit slow. At 3rd, I'll take Bayern. Now, a lot are skeptical with this club as they fell short to 3rd place in the Bundesliga last season, to then appointing company who got relegated from the Premier League with Burnley. I'm not sure how far the club will go in the later stages of the competition, but they still seem to hold a solid identity to at least do well in the first round of Champions League football. Alright, despite being 9 places off on this one, and being incorrect in terms of the zone Bayern were placed in, I don't feel that guilty about getting this one wrong. I'm sure a lot of people predicted Bayern to be in the top 8. I know this was a different format compared to normal, but always in the first round of the Champions League, Bayern tend to demolish every team they face in the group stage. So I thought we'd be seeing a similar thing here, and they had an incredible start, proving that point, beating Dinamo Zagreb 9-2, the most goals we have seen by one side in the Champions League. Company rightfully addressed his haters, but then they went on to lose to Aston Villa, and then got smoked by a club they usually tend to destroy, Barcelona 4-1. They bounced back convincingly in their next few fixtures, narrow victories over Benfica, PSG, demolished Shakhtar, but then couldn't break down Feyenoord and conceded 3 to them. So even though Bayern still remain as an elite side that go all out at moments, they have been randomly losing their teeth, and they have not been able to excel properly in this Champions League. I do think them getting in the playoffs is very disappointing. It just seemed like one of those top 8 teams you could surely bank to be there. However, they fell to 12th place instead. Still not the end of the world, obviously, but quite a letdown from the best club in Germany. At 2nd place, I will take the Champions League winners from last season, Real Madrid. I still think they have what it takes to go undefeated, but maybe a draw or 2 will halt them from getting that 1st place spot. It wouldn't matter, obviously, and I still think this club is one of the favorites to win the entire competition. Real Madrid is another side I'm sure many people are expecting to be in that top 8, given their incredible Champions League legacy. However, they definitely had their inconsistent patches of form. Kylian Mbappe took some time to really turn up with Los Blancos. Random moments of injury crisis as well. For example, Vinicius Jr. was not available against Liverpool. They actually shared stats across the board with Bayern. I would definitely say it's a very underwhelming result for both clubs. Obviously, they're still in the race for the Champions League, but you would expect much better from both elite teams, especially given that this is the most successful club in the Champions League, and they just won it last season as well. So all eyes were on them to perform here. I don't mean to sound like a hater, but there also were some matches that they were victorious in, yet they did not play like the clear-out better side. They just relied on those golden moments. For example, against Stuttgart on the first match day, they won 3-1, but the scoreline doesn't really suggest how they played. Same thing against Atalanta. they narrowly won 3-2, while definitely having some lucky moments throughout the match. I'm only being critical because this is historically the best club in the world, so of course, they're supposed to be pushing for that top 8 position. -9 there, incorrect placement, but number 1 has to be the worst prediction I made in this video. Debatable actually with Lille, but in terms of how many different placements, this is statistically the worst prediction I made. That means at first place, I'm giving it to Manchester City. On paper and the tactics they possess under one of the best managers in the world, they won't let many clubs faze them. As long as their key players are fit, I see them maybe just slipping once at one point. But other than that, 3 points in each fixture. It would obviously be massive for any other club to get 3 points against them though. I'm not saying I think this club will win the Champions League at the end, but I think they have what it takes to get first place in the league phase. 21 places off, Manchester City have been having a terrible season given their standards under Pep Guardiola. This has to be by far his worst ever season with the club. They were undergoing a massive winless streak, which obviously translated to the Champions League, losing 4-1 to Amorim's last Champions League match with Sporting, blowing a 3-0 lead against Feyenoord with some terrible defensive errors, losing head-to-head against Juventus, and then blowing a 2-0 lead against PSG. It all came down to that final match day against Club Brugge, and thankfully for them, it was not City who blew their lead. Club Brugge were 1-0 up at halftime, and City were able to score 3 in the second half. 21 place difference, by far my worst ever prediction in this video. However, no one was expecting for them to have the downfall like they did. They had been consistent for so many years. Maybe you could have argued that they could fall out of that top 8 list, but not heavily disappoint in this manner to just do it on the final match day. To me, they're definitely not in the favorite equation, but you never know. Form is temporary, and this side is still brilliant on paper. Well, there you have it, guys. Those are all of my Champions League predictions I made before this league phase began. Thankfully, I brushed myself up at moments during the matchday predictions, but this overall league phase was terrible. In terms of predicting each zone correctly, I got 19 clubs correct and 17 incorrect. And in terms of this point system that I was suggested to do, I'm not going to say the number out loud in case I miscalculated it, and I'm going to recount while I'm editing the video. Obviously, it was not terrific, but let me know honestly how you guys did in the comments below. Also, feel free to let me know any information I missed out on in your club. There was a lot to go through, so I definitely missed out on some detail here and there. But regardless, thank you all for making it to the end. I will see you all very, very soon. I will be predicting the playoff round, the round of 16, etc. in the future, so make sure you stay tuned for that by subscribing to the channel. Take care, la cu noci.